So, what do you want to know? Well, my name is Janis Ede, and I'm going to talk about, have my reflections about my war years, but only as a child growing up, because I was 8 when the war began. But we've had such a response to a little insertion we put into, Brighton Past, and people very kindly showed the interest to ask questions and give us plenty of information and photographs, which I really was very pleased with. It helped me to remember even more. Well, that was probably one of the most memorable things that happened during the war to me. And I was living at the bottom of Springfield Road, Brighton, and living a life in the war as you do, and you just get used to every day. I had just come home from school for my lunch, because we had a midday lunch and we went home in those days, no school dinners. I had about an hour and a half to 2 hours, and I can remember that day. It was warm, it was in the middle of the year. It was the 25th of May actually, and it was about 1:15, I suppose, when I arrived home. And I got in. "Is the lunch ready, Mum? You know, ready for my food?" And she said, no, will you go and get me some bread first round the corner? So she gave me the coupons and the money, and off I went to the baker's to get a loaf of bread. And on my way back, I stopped underneath the viaduct, London Road, Brighton, to speak to a friend I'd just met. She too had just come home for her lunch. And we sort of chatting away, stupid girlish things that girls do. And the sirens went, and we both looked at each other and said, well, we really ought to start getting home if the siren's gone. And as we said goodbye, I was halfway home and the pips went. Now the pips, a lot of people have never heard of these pips. It was a sort of what it sounds like, pips going, which gave you a final warning that actually enemy planes were overhead. So, of course, I really put a spurt on then, got into my house, screamed at my mother, "Mum, get under the stairs, the pips have just gone." And she turned round to me quite coolly and calmly and said, "Stop being so dramatic." And I said, "Please," and I thought, I can't argue with you, it'll all be over. So I called my brother, who was then about 6 years old. He'd just come home from school for his lunch, and he was in the garden. He came running in. And we all used to go to the staircase underneath the stairs, because we were told that was the safest place in the house to go. And then there was my little brother, who was only about 2, in his playpen. My mother used to leave him in the bay window with the window open and the sun shining in, so that he got fresh air, and she knew where he was while she was working. And I rushed into him, picked him up, run to the staircase. We all got to underneath the stairs. By that time, the bomb had dropped and the first blast came. I've never seen my mother run so fast in her life. She started to believe what I had told her then. And bless her, she got hold of all of us and sort of covered our bodies with her body to try and protect us. And we were all sort of shut underneath the stairs. I could just see over her shoulder. And the blast of the bomb was horrific. It's something I can't explain to you. Nothing that you could experience today. But when I looked at the walls, I could see the walls bending with the blast. They were sort of bending like that and getting deeper and deeper, the bends. And I thought, any minute now, it's going to crack. And we've got 3 flats above us which are going to fall on top of us. And I thought, what can I do? Nothing you could do. You just sat there and waited for it to happen. And then I realised that the blast was getting less, shallower, because the bends were getting less. And we all sort of recovered. I thought, is it all right? Can we move? And we looked at each other and we started to relax a bit more. And then, we thought, well, the raid has happened. Will there be any more? But there wasn't. And then the air raid siren went to give us the all clear, so we knew we were safe then. The bombers, the planes had gone away. And we all sort of started opening our little doors, looking out to see what had happened and who was there. And neighbours were doing the same thing, and we all said, "Are you all right? Are you all right?" And of course the answers came back, "Yes." What has happened? That was a close one. And we realised all the glass had come in, all the windows had come in, they were shattered. So if my little brother had been left in his playpen, he would have been cut to pieces. Although we had the plaster across the windows to stop them from sort of really breaking, they still managed to splinter, and he would have been cut to pieces. So actually, as far as my family was concerned, we were all right. We were shaken, but all right. Shaken but not stirred. Well, I understand from researching it that it was only 5 minutes. I must admit it seemed like a lifetime when it was happening, but it was only a 5-minute raid. And I do understand that there were about several German planes. They were Stukas, the German Stuka that came in, and several of them came in, and they dropped bombs on some other places in Brighton. But being as selfish as we all were, just taking care of our own little patch, I don't remember anybody talking about the rest of the bombs. We were just trying to get ourselves together and making sure we were all quite safe. And that's how it went. About an hour later, people were saying, "Oh, the viaduct's come down, the viaduct's come down." And so we walked to the bottom of the road to have a look and see what was happening. And there were about 2 arms or 2 legs of the viaduct which were down, and just a rail line hanging across from one leg to the other. And we thought, my goodness, how did that happen? But people were still walking about and all amazed and well, traumatised, I suppose, if you can use the word trauma for then. I don't think it was invented then. It is today. So we all started chattering and talking about our experience, and it turned out that the bomb had come down and hit a garden wall in Argyle Road, skidded twice in the road. The second skid gave the bomb lift. It went through the window of the house opposite, straight through the internal wall and straight out the back window without any other damage being done to that house. It didn't blow up until it hit the leg of the viaduct, and then of course that's where all the blast came from and all the damage. But I understand that there were lots of people in that house. People left their front doors unlocked, so that anybody could run in for shelter if they wanted to. And I understand there were about 12 people huddled in the hallway of that house, and the bomb would have gone right through the side of them. And how they felt, I can't imagine. They must have been thanking their lucky stars. Only the windows coming in. That's all that happened. Not in the raid that we had, the bombs. I understand it was 5 bombs dropped around about that area to get the viaduct. Of course it was Brighton Station, I think they were after on the main line. But I understand that from those other bombs that fell in Brighton, there were 1 or 2 people killed and there were people injured. Now the viaduct, amazingly enough, with the help of scaffolding, it was running. The first train ran over it within 24 hours. Now that really takes a lot of believing. It was only the scaffolding holding it up, and then it took about another 6 weeks before the viaduct was rebuilt. Now I often ask myself, in the time of war, how did that happen so quickly, when today we have to wait weeks for a builder to come round to do just a little repair to your house? Most of the men, the experienced men, were in the army. But of course, when you got to a certain age, say 45, 50, the army didn't want you. They only send young men to be killed in war today, or then. And I can only think it must have been those older men and maybe very young ones before they actually joined up, which would have been, 16, 17, and they, with the help of the more experienced men, helped to put it together. But I also asked myself, where did they get all the scaffolding from? Because it was wartime and you couldn't even buy a pot of paint. Where did they get the bricks from to rebuild that viaduct? It was amazing when you think about it. They really got their finger out. And if they had it running within 6 weeks properly, a normal service, that is some achievement when you think about it. And I'd be very happy if anybody has any more information about it. Well, of course, living in those days, we only knew what we had already experienced. We knew it was wartime, and it was 1943 that this bomb hit, and I think that was fairly late in the war. We were expecting Hitler to come through in about 1939, 1940. Actually, Brighton would have been one of the first places he would have marched through. So we all felt quite relieved he hadn't done that. We felt very sorry because we realised people on the other side of the channel were being bombed and really living a hell of a life. We just knew there was war, we couldn't see the end of it, so we just had to get on with it. Which today people don't seem to, perhaps they don't think they've got a future. You've always got a future, always.